Hey everybody, my name is Shane and welcome back to Time Capsule. My phone and iPad are both being sucky, so I'm just recording this on my computer. I hope that doesn't turn you off to my channel completely. I'm so sorry. Whether or not it turns me off my channel is already being decided. This is going to be a quick video continuing on my series about the Hulu original series, The Handmaid's Tale. In the first video, I talked about the show's decision not to demonstrate the white supremacist aspect to Gilead's structure. I think this affects the adaptation's themes, and I talk about it for a little bit. In part 2, I talk about Gilead's treatment of women, and people who just aren't men. I think the modern retelling of the novel has the unexpected effect of making the show's image of feminism in Gilead unexpectedly optimistic. In the last video in this series, I'm going to be talking about how the show has dealt with the ramifications of extending June's story so far past the realm of the novel. We are going to be getting into some of the issues I'm going to be discussing in the third part of the series, but this will just be a little amuse-bouche. I have read the very kind comments that you have left on the first and second part of this series telling me that you have enjoyed the content and want to see more, so I promise you part 3 is coming soon. My basic thesis for that video is that the Hulu adaptation imbues June with a lot of agency, and I think that kind of unexpectedly puts her and the other victims of Gilead on the hook for their own abuse. Yikes. June is such a badass, and all of the other handmaids are just whiny little brats who deserve their own subjugation. That is an exaggeration, but it is a loose approximation of the statement I think the show might be in the process of making if it keeps going down this road. Possibly. But I'm going to hold off on making that video for the moment. Because I took so long with the first and second parts of this series, we are now well into the 4th season of the show. When I first started watching, I was just binge watching 3 seasons of a show that might as well have been off the air. But now it's actively premiering, and my ideas of it are changing while I'm making this series. So what I want to do here is sort of loosely lay out what I think the 4th season is currently doing and how I think it's going to affect the 3rd video of this series. I'm having a lot of complicated feelings about season 4, and I think it would be a mistake to just wait until I can come out with part 3. I'm having ideas now that I might not be having by the time the season ends. I certainly won't have the same thoughts by the time that video gets up. It could be 80 by the time that video goes up. I have no idea. It's a crapshoot. Spoilers for all of Handmaid's Tale. Up into the 4th season, we've currently just seen episode 8. As always, be aware that this series comes with a huge content warning for sexual assaults, patriarchal tropes, and for this video specifically, female to male sexual assault. I know that's not generally roped in under the content warning of sexual assault, so if that's a sensitive issue for you, bear that in mind. When I turned on season 4 episode 8 entitled Testimony, I did so with anticipation of exactly one thing. I wanted this one thing to be covered quickly and thoroughly, and it didn't happen throughout the entire episode. The last scene of the previous episode, entitled Home, featured June, our main character, raping her husband Luke. Lest you disagree with my use of the term rape here, let's review the facts. June climbs on top of him while he's asleep. He wakes up to her groping him, and he is visibly confused. She takes out his genitals, and he tells her to stop. Repeatedly. She roughly removes his hands from her body and covers his mouth, and he then slumps back, avoids eye contact, and visibly goes numb. But wait, he is visibly stronger than her. He could have pushed her off, or at least explicitly said no. Except she just got out of a country where she was raped and beaten horrifically and regularly. He knows that pushing her away from a moment of desired sexual contact would fuck her up, and he loves her. Make no mistake, physical force is not the only tool rapists use to assault their victims. Using head tricks, emotional manipulation, and even pedantry are all ways perpetrators of sexual crimes commit sex crimes and then insulate themselves from punishment. By and large, we recognize this in cases of men who assault women. And society is starting to come around to the idea that men can assault men and women can assault women. But now that a woman is assaulting a man, we're suddenly confused about what this actually entails. We're still refusing to call rape rape just because it happens by a woman to a man. Get out of here with that garbage. I don't like that. Get out of here. Get out of here with that garbage. I don't know why I felt the need to say it like that. I wrote it in the script too. Gaabage. I don't know why. Gilead, where June lives in Gilead, is used to be Boston, so I guess it makes sense. That's what I was alluding to the whole time. So we agree that June raped Luke. Now, I don't think that this necessarily makes June a terrible person. In fact, if this had led to a discussion about the humanity of rapists, a statement that people who commit horrific crimes are not inherently monstrous, unfathomable evildoers who should be punished with no regard for their sentience, but that they're people just like us, they can be our friends or even fellow victims, maybe we could have removed a lot of the harmful abstraction from rape. We can stop seeing rape as something that only a couple of unspeakably evil people are capable of, and rather as a horrific byproduct of thousands of years of social coding encouraging us to think of other people as resources for use, rather than other human beings with a mind of their own, as long as we can get what we want from them without consequences. But we only get to do that if we talk about it. And The Handmaid's Tale, a show about systemic oppression and about the usurpation of abstract and uncaring systems over the humanity of actual people, and specifically how it relates to sexual assault, just has nothing to say about the matter, apparently. And that's trash. I don't like that. The scene was not talked about once. We got one visual allusion to this scene, where June basically tries to do the same thing again. Basically what happens is June is trying to get out of having a difficult conversation with Luke, and even though she theoretically wants to be there for him, it's clear that she just kind of can't at this moment, which is fair. So she starts kissing him, and then slowly undoing his belt, and he says no. She keeps going until Luke actually pushes her off and says, "Just talk to me." June then puts on her pissiest face and walks away, because she, of all people, has no idea why someone would ever get angry about another person trying to have sex with them against their will. Like, how is she supposed to know that people not listening when you say no or wait, and then not stopping, might make them a little bit angry? She just has no experience with that. How could we possibly expect her to know that that's wrong? I don't like how unconscious June is of her behavior, and I don't not like it because I don't like it when characters have flaws. I'm a script consultant. I regularly yell at other scriptwriters for not giving their characters enough flaws. Link to my book in the description. The problem is that I genuinely don't know if the writers know that this is a problem. So, back to episode 8. In Anne from Gilead, one with a personal connection to Emily rolls up into their group therapy session and confronts Emily. Emily makes it very clear that she does not want to talk to this aunt. She flails in an attempt to get away from her. She is physically trying to distance herself from this person. June and Moira get her to back off, and June gets her Stone Cold B close-up, which you better believe we'll be talking about in part 3 of this series. But then June takes a little slip of paper with the woman's name and information on it. That night, she interrogates Emily in front of Luke and Moira, telling her that she needs to face this woman, patently rejecting Emily's assertion that she's different to June, that she therefore has different goals and desires to June. And Moira and Luke rightly chastise June. She does not get to decide how Emily deals with her trauma. June then brings the aunt into the group therapy session, introducing this raw force of trauma into this place that is supposed to be safe for Emily. She does so against the wishes of Emily and Moira, who is running the group and should theoretically get a say in who is in it. And she then whips the entire group into voting the aunt into doing this little confessional moment. So let's review. June has now violated 2 people's consent on some very fucking important issues. The question of when and how Luke agrees to sex, and when and how Emily deals with confronting a person who abused her, is just snatched right out of their hands by June. They don't need to offer consent because June knows better, and here's how I know the writers think that June knows better. They just say it. Back in the scene of Emily confronting her abuser, Emily finally says that there is nothing the aunt can do to rectify the situation in her eyes. That night, Emily is having a discussion with Moira, and she decides to seek out the aunt again, maybe get her to testify on behalf of the victims of Gilead. So she drives to the woman's house the next day and finds that she has hanged herself. During the next group meeting, all of the other previous handmaids are projecting their own feelings onto Emily, not making room for her to express herself, but rather submitting to the flaws of empathy, assuming that she feels the way they would have felt in the situation. June says, "Let's let Emily tell us how she feels." To which I personally would have responded, "Oh, do I get a say now? Now that it's convenient to you?" But alas, Emily answers in the way that the writers want her to answer, and she says, "I'm glad she's dead, and I hope I had something to do with it." And then all of the former handmaids are talked around into admitting similar feelings. Now, I am not here to say that the people in the group need to behave like perfect little victims, or that June has to either. My problem is that the text seems to be framing June's clever manipulation of the people around her to rally a stand against Gilead from the outside as the right decision. That, conversely, choosing to hunker down and focus on one's mental health, and by extension, in the case of Moira, help to heal the other people who have gotten out of that hellhole, is wrong. Moira is doing good work by helping the people affected by Gilead psychologically. But her and Luke's impotent attempts to help June untangle her trauma before jumping into the work of saving her daughter seem to be treated as useless, as not enough. When the other members of the support group imply that they want to continue talking about their rage and revenge fantasies, Moira tells them that they can't be angry forever, as if that's something a rational person with trauma training would say, as if she would not understand by now, the victim, rebel, and humanitarian aid giver that she is, that some people do hold on to rage forever and that that's okay. And June, in all her perfect wisdom, says that they have the right to be angry. Forever. To not only feel the way that they feel, but to accept how they feel as the new paradigm, and deal with it, and use it as fuel to the fire to beat back the bad guys. Ugh. And this gets to the issue that I want to talk about in part 3 of this series. I'm worried that June is going to become the perfect little victim. Perfect, not by traditional standards. I don't think she's going to become some demure, ethereal creature that harbors no more grudges against the people who abused her. I think she's in danger of becoming the kind of victim that the text portrays as having very good reason for having gone through their suffering. A victim that the text thinks can only validate what remains of their humanity by razing Gilead to the ground. For absolutely no reason I can see other than the fact that June is the main character, June has been granted a ridiculous amount of power and esteem. She's not special, particularly, and that's because she's based off of a book character that is specifically not supposed to be special. The Offred of the novels is just a person who gets by in Gilead as best as she can. Her desperate and understandable attempt to get into the resistance is systemically and utterly crushed by a robust system of observation and thought police. She is a reader surrogate, by which we can experience the miserable life of a non-cisgender man in Gilead. The show's version of June is not a viewer proxy in a horrible situation that exists to make a poignant statement. June is a viewer's delusion of what they would do if they were in Gilead. She tells us that we wouldn't have been saved by no man the way Offred in the books is. We would free ourselves twice, only to come back and save hundreds of people, all single-handedly. This was always my suspicion of the show. If you've seen the last 2 videos that I've made on this topic, you know that I have conflicting feelings about the radically optimistic direction of the show. I know that sounds weird. How is it optimistic? It's so harsh and cruel. But that's just the directness of the screen making the moment-by-moment drama more impactful. The acting, lighting, music, and cinematography are all imbuing the moment-to-moment suffering with more poignance and impact. And the situations that the characters deal with are heartbreaking and intense, there's no denying that. But there is a Canada in the show, and it's actually accessible, unlike in the books, where it's kind of a Shangri-La situation. There is an escape, theoretically, and the indefinite timeline of the show implies that there will be something like a happily ever after at some point. The book, by contrast, is bleak and uncertain. Consider that the last pages of the novel proper consist of June getting into a van that could be taking her to refuge or to the gallows. And the epilogue doesn't really confirm whether she gets to safety or not either. I know, in my heart, that I need to be giving this show room to be whatever it's gonna be. I'm gonna wait until the end of season 4 to continue working on my script for part 3 of this series. After that, I'll see how I feel about the season as a whole. I'm not enjoying the series, by the way. There have been some genuinely emotional and intense moments so far. I've cried multiple times throughout this season. At my age, do you know how hard it is to get me to feel anything anymore? I just wanted to share with you some of my apprehensions for the end of this series and why I'm feeling conflicted about it. On the one hand, June is a really fun viewer surrogate. Okay, maybe fun isn't the right word, but satisfying. She's the gang rape victim that goes on to kill everyone that ever laid a finger on her. She's the average Jane that rises to greatness in the face of great odds. And now she's a bad bitch out for blood, and I'm here for it. But on the other hand, I'm worried that June's text does not seem to understand who she is and what she's doing in the narrative right now. It mistakes grittiness and bloodlust for genuine moral ambiguity. And as with the rape scene that doesn't seem to know it's a rape scene, all of June's wrong-headedness seems to be the product of a writing team that thinks she is fundamentally right. And I don't know if she's going to be able to improve if her own creators don't seem to know what her problem is. So that's what I had to say about the most recent episode of The Handmaid's Tale Hulu original show. I ran out of script, so I started writing the script at like 10 o'clock last night after I saw the episode, and I just kept going until like 2 a.m. And I'm a bit tired. This is the part of the video where I randomly promote my work, so if you'd like to stick around for that, pull up a chair, or just stay where you are, and if you're not into it, you can leave, that's okay. That's okay. I understand. I wouldn't stick around either. All I'm gonna promote this time is my ebook. It is called Reframing the Screenwriting Process. As you might know by now, if you've been watching my most recent videos, I am a script consultant, and I have written a book about some of the work that I've done, with some of the general advice that I like to give to writers. My general thesis for this book is that a lot of screenwriting books will tell you how to write a screenplay in such a way that you can sell it, but they won't necessarily tell you how to enjoy your work, and I don't think you're going to make a very good product if you don't enjoy it. I just finished writing a pilot myself, and I had a really great time, and I didn't do any preparation for it whatsoever. I know it's going to require a lot of editing, but I was proud of myself for getting it done, and I enjoyed the work. That's how I want you to feel when you approach your screenplay. For a limited time, I am giving out free script consultations with every purchase of my book. All you have to do is buy the book for $4, send me the receipt through shaneslepian.com, and I will give you a 3,000-word script report that I usually provide for $60. If you'd like to see some examples of my script consultation, in case you don't believe that I'm actually good at my job, you can go to my portfolio and check out some of my previous work. I know what I'm talking about, and I want to talk about your work. That was stupid. I had a really fun time writing this book, and I kind of think that that is what makes a book good. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you will tune in for the last part of this series, which will take place at some point. Who can say when? Not me.